And feel free to ask us questions, any questions you may have. So I'm going to start with the newsletter that didn't go out this week, as our newsletter platform malfunctioned and sent newsletter from the sources that are available, but not the articles we picked. So one of the articles I picked was about the metaverse. It was by CoinDesk, and it talks about how metaverse has existed for quite a few years, but now it's sort of merging with the crypto concepts, with NFTs, with DeFi, and there is liquidity inside metaverse, and one can actually exchange products and goods and services and media inside this metaverse with liquidity. So, Jeanette, you want to talk a little bit about metaverse?
Yeah, the metaverse is really an alternate reality that is based on our digital selves. And I think we've had, uh, as Mariana said, there's been samples of this around in the world for a while, really beginning with the web and websites and having avatars on websites, and then moving through products like SimWorld and in SimCity, and then moving to AR and VR. And now we're really seeing this connection of blockchain and decentralized technology coming into this space. And I think one of the really important things it does is it allows people to not only control what part of themselves and their information they want to share, but also allows everybody who's participating, not just a chosen few platform developers, but everybody to monetize their participation and make a little money for the work that they're doing.
And Facebook just converted to Meta, trying to. So many years ago, maybe 3 years ago, when I met Superworld, I was advising several AR VR companies, and my first AR VR company in blockchain space was actually called VarCrypt. So VR, AR, and crypto basically as part of their name. And when I first met him, I thought they were just really, really ahead of their time. This was like in 2015, and they which sort of building the world on blockchain, but they thought that all media, film, television, music, VR, and AR, all of it will be actually distributed through the blockchain, without all the different distribution mechanisms that we go through today, like studios, broadcasters, record companies, etc. So I thought they were, VarCrypt was definitely ahead of its time. And it was the first cryptocurrency I received, which had to be actually wired to my computer. And it's still somewhere on my computer, as it wasn't traded on the exchanges back then, as there were no exchanges that were functioning back then. So since then, I would say, having been with an angel group that invested in Ethereum, the Ethereum has brought us this sort of ability to do both DeFi and NFTs in such a way that it allows so many different participants in the market to just jump in and create experiences and get paid for them in ways that no one was really able to do in the past. I mean, Jeanette, you worked on a bunch of VR and AR projects in your career. What were some of the major issues with adoption of VR and AR?
Well, there's really a bunch. One is the need for a headset, which for a lot of people was a non starter. Um, Headsets are expensive, and they're less expensive now, but they were initially quite expensive. And it's the same even with stereoscopic glasses and television. When they came out, they were kind of fragile, and not everybody really wants to experience the metaverse with this device on their face. So I think that that was a problem. I think that early VR, the refresh rate wasn't very good, and some people felt very uncomfortable in the headset, so that was an issue. But another really major issue was nobody was really making money. There were a few companies that were making money, and we're seeing a lot more companies making money in the health and wellness space with Supernatural and a couple other major health products. But it just, in terms of being a cash cow in a big financial marketplace, it kind of fell short. And I think a lot of people too felt that the experience of participating in VR while you're together in the virtual world, it kind of isolates you from the real world in a way that can be disorienting and uncomfortable. So I think that we're seeing with this new approach to the metaverse that there's a lot of ways that people can participate that feels more organic and natural to them.
I think that's awesome the way you described, sort of the history behind this. If you look at VR and AR, and you talk to someone like Victor Harwood at Digital Hollywood, who's been with all the different waves of AR and VR, he would say it's like probably a technology that's 30 years in the making, and it keeps getting sort of pushed to the front of the investment opportunities, and then it doesn't quite deliver. And what you're describing, Jeanette, was this whole idea that there were a couple of hundred different headsets, and none of them really got adopted by the consumers because, frankly, there were no applications. And interestingly enough, crypto all of a sudden is able to come up with so many applications that hundreds of millions are being spent on crypto experiences that are related to metaverse. So let's look at Superworld. When I met Rich, he really thought about that he was building a world that's going to connect the digital and the physical world, and that he's going to help people on board between the two worlds. And I thought, well, it's like an operating system for the mixed reality experience, but it was really more than that. I was thinking almost like narrowly at that point. Really what it is that there's certain things we want to do digitally, and there's certain things that we want to do in person and in physical world, and we should go back and forth and optimize those experiences. And that's kind of the idea behind Superworld. Hi, Adam.
Hi
Hi.
guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you quite well. Do you have a question or a comment?
I do. Jeanette, it's for you. I was just reading your profile and I was curious as to what's your first venture capital with a pile of CD-ROMs, a plastic funnel, and a piece of PVC pipe, a straw, and a rubber chicken. Could
Yep.
you, I mean, it's very fascinating. So I just kind of wanted to hear more about that.
Well, actually, I can tie that directly into what we're talking about today, which is some technologies are a lot easier to visualize or to conceptualize than others. And I think one of the reasons that VR got a lot of funding early on is because it's a fairly easy concept to explain and to understand. Oh, I put this thing on my face and I can see around, and I live in this alternate world. Whereas initially, I think a number of the blockchain companies have had a much harder time explaining what blockchain is and why it matters, right? And when I started way back when, I was with one of the first MPEG encoding software companies. And nobody knew what digital video was then. Nobody knew what MPEG encoding was, or DCT transforms, or DCT based compression, and all of this stuff. And when I would go to investors and I would try to explain to them what this was, you have to understand this was in the early 90s. There wasn't really a basis of understanding. And so I said to them, okay, see this pile of CDs? Well, with MPEG compression, you can get this many CDs worth of stuff on one CD. And if you want to understand why MPEG is important to bandwidth, this big PVC pipe, this is your uncompressed video. And this little PVC pipe or straw, this is your broadband line, your internet line. And the funnel, that's the part we do, right? We take all that fat stuff and we make it go down to a small enough stream that it can go over the straw. And then the rubber chicken was talking about how that allows you to put more channels on your bird in the sky, which is what all the broadcast suits were calling a satellite back then. And I mean, literally, I would go to these meetings with these guys, these three-piece suit guys, and the engineers would start talking and they would just turn to me and they would just say, Ms. Jeanette, and I would say, yes, sir. And they would say, what the hell are those boys talking about? So I would pull those tools out of my bag and then they would understand why, not just the what, but the why they should care about it. And we got investment before I even finished my degree in college, which is an opera, by the way. But there you go. That's the story.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. But Mariana, don't you think that's really an issue with blockchain sometimes is that the concepts are a little harder for some people to grasp. And I think that the people who are involved in it are happy and super excited. But I think sometimes in the past, the business community has been a little slower to adopt because they don't always get it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that the cryptocurrency market was really, really difficult for most people to understand. There were regulatory hurdles that were being thrown at companies without sort of regulations actually being passed, and then subsequently there were investigations into their practices, their business practices, and legality of it without set of regulation. And some of the countries didn't react well to cryptocurrencies, and other jurisdictions embraced it. So it was quite complicated, I would say. Starting in 2013, as the things started to actually show up as companies. There was a Satoshi paper 13 years ago, and not much was going on. There were a few, Bitcoins being mined here and there, but there weren't really ventures in this space. It was not until Ethereum actually launched. This is when the Bit Angels kind of started as well, 2013, when someone said, okay, we're going to create a decentralized web using these smart contracts and using Ethereum platform. So Bitcoin was really just an application of this digital cryptocurrency, showing that a decentralized system can work. And they use currency as an example. And so subsequently, every other network that launched in the space was going to have a currency. it, and they're going to be a native layer or the network piece of the decentralized network. So after Ethereum launched, there were a couple hundred of those that did ICOs back in 2017 and 18. About 20 billion got invested in this space. And most people were very skeptical because this whole idea of currency somehow signals to most of the world, and the reporters really didn't help there, that this is something negative, that it is illegal, that it's funding illegal actions, that it's going to fund illegal actions, that it's never going to be approved by the regulators. And there were all these hurdles with crypto for years that went on, all the way through the crypto winter in 2019. And it really wasn't until the pandemic hit in 2020, and then DeFi platform started to launch, like big time in 2020, that the market didn't revive. But it was still a market of the original crypto investors in 2020. In 2021, the NFTs burst on the scene. That Beeple sale, really, everybody should be very, very grateful to them. That Beeple sale put things in perspective, and today, just the Bored Apes sold over 1 billion. So we're in a process of everybody embracing crypto. The NFTs did it. They kind of converted the market's view of crypto, and now the tokens are okay, and the NFTs are okay, and the DeFi space is okay. I even read in Barron's, which is one of the top financial trade magazines, that DeFi is being embraced by the institutions. So this is a very different time today than even a couple of years back. Hey, Anne, welcome.
Yeah, Anna's going to be on our panel tomorrow, so I'm very excited that
Oh
she's
my
here.
God, my favorite people.
So welcome, Anna.
Mariana, I haven't even had time to ring you back
Hi.
after we were chatting this morning about lunch this weekend. Wow, it certainly is a different moment in time, isn't it? I didn't get to hear your whole preamble, but I do feel that it does take a long time for us all to get here, and
It literally took a generation, at least from my perspective.
Or two.
Yeah, yeah.
It depends on how you look at it, certainly. But and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what people perceive to be the metaverse and what you think the metaverse is. That's something, there's a lot of talking about the metaverse now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I'm now referring it to the M underscore 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 verse. But I honestly, there are, in fact, longtime experts in this that we were just all talking about. That I see Ed down in the audience with Jackie Morey about what this is, and to be honest, there are some people who say it has to have a social component. Other people who say it doesn't have to. That it can be solo, where you live, work, and play. I think it can be just a book, a meta. Can just be text based. But essentially, it's a world that exists in our imaginations, and it can be. That's my favorite way to think about it, because I think it's as rich and varied as whatever the human, and I look at humans as a lens, frankly, for how we perceive the world. It's different for everyone, and I do think that is being now reflected in technology, especially relational technology. But it can be game based, it could be browser based, it could be web game platform based. And I don't think that there's going to be only one metaverse. We'll be lucky if we can get interoperability, which is going to be very hard to do, but a worthy pursuit. And there was recently an interoperability conference that was held just on this very subject. And the most important issue for all of it is how you move through these worlds. So, what is your digital identity? A metaverse could be your medical metaverse. It could be, a almost any different way that you group data, and then look at it in a way that is three. I think it doesn't even have to be three dimensional. I mean, we were talking about this last night. It could be 2 dimensional or 2.5 dimensional. Um, and it's not that it's so vague it can't be defined. But it's, I think, anything where you have a digital mediation. That's, I guess, how I would look at it. Hey, Ed.
Hi, Carlos. Hi, Ed. I would love it if you two could introduce yourselves to our group here.
Oh, hi guys. Yeah, Ed Lance here, Vortex Immersion Media, and it's interesting. I'm just prepping for a talk tomorrow at the Infinity Festival in Hollywood on a metaverse project that I did in AltSpace VR. It's a VRC VR festival, the Burning Man Festival, and so yeah, I'm really getting my head into this space and. And what you were saying, and good to see you again.
What a treat.
Yeah, what I was thinking, but the interoperability thing is what we need are like almost like toll bridges between these metaverses with a way to take all of your assets and translate them over, to port them over, would be awesome, because right now you have these isolated silos, these walled gardens. Anyway, I guess that's a long introduction and a comment, but it's good to be here.
Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Carlos. I'm an executive conference producer. I produce conferences in various different verticals, anything ranging from blockchain, IT, finance. I also do anti-aging and aesthetics, which is a random one in my portfolio. I am also an avid NFT investor, and I recently received my executive education for certificate in AI leadership. So I'm really excited about all the different aspects of the future of anything ranging from NFTs to investing to DeFi and ultimately anything and everything that's going to happen in the multiverse. Just to dovetail on what you guys mentioned here, I think interoperability is going to be one of the biggest issues moving forward, just because there are so many licenses that are held by individual companies. And a lot of these companies, perfect example, are going to want to protect their individual licenses. And what I mean by that is, perfect example is you're not going to want to have a figurine of Mickey Mouse standing next to, something along the lines of something from Grand Theft Auto that's going to shoot it through the head. Disney might have an issue with that. So I am really excited about the space, but I do think there's going to be a lot of issues with scalability with the multiverse.
It's so awesome. All those comments are just from people who have been deeply in the space. So it's very, very interesting to hear what you guys think about it. The most bizarre set of circumstances. There's a conference this week, at the same time as Infinity Festival, which is where we're all going. I'm here actually at the Infinity Festival this minute. But the interesting thing is that most of the people that are building the metaverse ended up going to New York this week for the New York City NFTs conference. And it literally sounds like something, CES, Consumer Electronics Show, like. There's literally every major act that's had an NFT is playing somewhere. There are parties from all the top tier projects, all the top tier platforms, layer one companies. It's almost like competing with CES, but it's all on a decentralized network. Do you guys feel that this new business, this metaverse, is going to be built by the same companies that build the internet, or is it going to be a whole new group of companies?
Whole new group of companies. I mean, there are some companies I think that uh, are, especially in the gaming space, that are going to be able to translate into this space. But I don't think. I think the business models have to change, and I don't know if these larger companies, let's say, the Facebooks of the world, are going to be able to do it. And I have serious doubt there because essentially of the way that tech companies have been valued in the past versus entertainment companies. And I don't think that they're going to be able to satisfy their shareholders in making these transitions. That said, the metaverse is open for anyone. Like, I mean, honestly, this is like the start of the new internet. And the thing that is the most important thing is the protocol. The protocols need to be open enough that we can all live, work, and play with a certain amount of privacy and anonymity. But I'm afraid that's not what's going to happen. I think that there's a march toward quantification and toward measuring everything and every place and everyone. And that is going to lead to a lockdown internet. And Web3 will not be the utopia that we're all hoping for unless we work very diligently and very consciously. We're going to end up with a top down internet where we are not able to innovate the way we'd all like. And that's the thing we need to keep our eye on.
That's
I
I agree, and if I may speak, what's interesting is, of course, building large infrastructure requires access to capital, and as you know, Facebook has plenty of capital to work with, and they're probably going to do amazing things. But I think ultimately, the future could well be a much more distributed, less walled garden kind of a scenario. And I think the thing that can drive that is DeFi, cryptocurrency, and all like that, because access to capital you start to, instead of capital being funneled through VCs and these sort of gatekeepers who are very, very risk averse. People now can go directly to the public and say, "Hey, is this something you guys want? If so, well, buy, some coins, tokens, or whatever, and you have this more of a direct. In other words, you can raise money without the usual barriers to entry. And that's really fascinating to me.
It is, and I would say crowdfunding is a subset of crowdsourcing. And in that sense, I've been in the space for almost 3 decades, with Grayzone being the first crowdsource company, and we had to figure out all of those different models. And we funded in a traditional way because the crowdfunding stuff didn't really get adoption until the last decade. And a lot of people approached me about crowdfunding, and I wasn't willing to take the risk at that time because essentially 10 to 20% of your raise was going to be going to the lawyers, and you needed to really pocket a lot of that money for risk because having non-qualified or uneducated investors was a higher risk 10 years ago. Now it's starting to become something where there's enough of a knowledge base, and there's enough of a rule set, and that I do think it's worth taking the risk. But of course, you know region to region, country to country, we have different rules governing crypto, and as much as I love it, I couldn't even do an ICO 3 years ago because of the kind of structure I have with my company and what my advisory board members were advising me. And I just wasn't able to take that risk. Now I feel like, as Mariana was starting to say when I came in the room, we're at a different point in time. The first NFTs were being done, in 2014 was the first one, and in 2016 that started to gain popularity, and still, like, people think NFTs just happened this year, right? And it does take a bit of time. And what's amazing to me, though, is whichever flavor ends up winning, and I think it's going to end up being kind of a combination. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, even if I find those utopian dreams to be completely attractive, but it's really something where we're going to have to be knowledgeable enough about the differences between a permissioned or an unpermissioned blockchain, and really understanding the people behind these chains. And then examples are going to be made of by for some people, where other people will quote unquote get away with it because the SEC can't go after everyone. But how do you ensure that you're not one of those people? And how do you keep your nose clean for that stuff? I'd like to hear from Mariana on that, really.
Oh, you know what's happened there? And that's a really good question. You have the first set of companies, the ICOs, they were sort of easy to find, especially the ones that raised a lot of money, like a Telegram of the world, 1.7 billion raised, EOS 4.5, et cetera, et cetera. So they were kind of easy to spot and easy to find, but you're having this sort of tsunami of fundraising going on. The Bored Apes just hit 1 billion in sales this week. That's a lot of sales for a collection of NFTs. And one of the Bored Apes got sold for 3.5 million at a Christie's auction. So you're looking at an aggregate raise that's a billion, but the company ownership, if you like, the group that the community that's managing Bored Apes, right, has probably gotten maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 20% of that raise. We don't know at this point. They can do a lot of things and they can build a lot of businesses with that money raised. That's a very serious raise if you compare it to what you're describing, like even VC money or crowdfunding. So the regulators will have to deal with all of it. They would have to deal with these crowdsourcing deals and crowdfunded deals, like with NFTs. They will have to deal with tokens that are still being launched at a breakneck speeds all over the world. They would have to deal with companies that are launching in jurisdictions that are providing regulation that's defined, and so it's hard to regulate the space. And I feel for the regulators, but you have to kind of allow the innovation to happen and then work with the industry to regulate it. I think that's what's going to happen here.
Overall, but I mean, there are a lot of artists complaining right now about how NFT sales are down. I mean, there are the breakout hits like Bored Apes, but how would you say people can get above the noise? Because there's quite a lot of it, and there are a lot of drops that don't sell, and there are even more of them that are underwater. uh, what can artists do and what can collectors do? Because I think they're one and the same in very many ways. Um, to be able to, really uh, get above the noise and gain the kind of traction, and what kind of tokenomics are needed to really ensure that a drop is incentivizing, throughout the food chain.
Well, that's a great question because, and my pet peeve at the same time, because think about the actual funding that's flowing into this market. And let's say you're launching a collection and you don't have a defined marketing plan, you're not going to have a successful collection. But then you can have a really great marketing plan and you have a really great collection. And then what are you going to do with that money raised? Are you going to launch a business that's a sustainable business that can replace some of the existing businesses that are not decentralized? That's my advice. You should think about it strategically. How could I change the music industry, change the film and television business, change, broadcasting, over the top business? How am I going to engage consumers into what I'm building, knowing that I can do an NFTs drop and then you're a member of a club that hopefully will deliver something you care about later on? So that I think is missing with a lot of the projects that have even been successful at this point.
One thing that occurs to me is that the very concept of rising above the noise is shifting because what we're able to do is not so much blast advertising out to the world at large, which is sort of the old school way of doing it, to try and make more noise or some gimmick or marketing gimmick to get your word out. It's more like we're able to gather into these affinity spaces where I'm not pushing anything. I'm creating an opportunity, and people who are resonant with that opportunity, of course, they have to be able to find you. But I think as these systems improve and the AI systems improve, if somebody's interested in something, um, boom, it's like a magnet. They'll be attracted right to opportunities that they have an affinity for.
I really think that, another key thing that people kind of confuse, and I always like to clarify, just at a very basic level, is that NFTs and crypto are different markets. And a lot of people say, oh, well, crypto and, NFTs are kind of the same. Well, no, they're not. NFTs are much more for the mainstream. They're for the average consumers that can go out and purchase like NBA Top Shot, perfect example, even Maker's Place that sells very high-end art, they accept credit cards. OpenSea accepts credit cards through MoonPay. A lot of these purchases are actually being made through credit cards, and I think that we're seeing a big dynamic shift in the way that people are starting to think about blockchain. So we really need to start clarifying that blockchain is used for different aspects, and the same people that are purchasing crypto and have the same ideals for crypto might not have the same ideals within the NFT space.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Carlos. But also, additionally, a lot of the people that are interested in the NFT space are also interested in the DeFi space. So in essence, a lot of the NFTs games that we're seeing and a lot of the NFTs applications that we're seeing now have variety of staking and yield farming and DeFi mechanisms being added into these offerings. Some of them are quite complicated, but as Ed pointed out, if you're a gamer and you like to learn how to yield farm better than someone else and beat someone at earning a higher interest rate on your staking and creating a better pool, etc., then you may actually enjoy the challenge of it, and if you have very little time like myself, maybe you won't enjoy that challenge. So it's going to be, it's going to be affinity groups that Ed was talking about, but the opportunity set for everything that this panel has been working on, and I know all of you very well for many years, everything you've ever worked on could actually be done in this next few years of our careers, and that's really the most exciting and fascinating thing that I've seen to date.
What do you
I,
mean? Can you go into that just a tiny bit more?
Yeah, so if you think about the music business and what Justin's doing with royalty company and with A16Z helping him out, trying to rethink the royalties in music, and that space better than I do. We're launching a company out of France called EarnTV, where you're going to be actually paid to participate in the ecosystem of television and film watching, and we have top tier content and top tier distribution partners, and everybody we talked to a year ago who was distributing content with us didn't even know what blockchain was. And I would say today they all want to hear about NFTs. They all want to hear about our blockchain components. They all want to hear about the tokens and how we're sort of shifting the way that ad supported programming is viewed, as well as pay-per-view stuff. So I would say OTT business will change. I'm seeing it firsthand what Superworld is doing with creating a hybrid space, so where you live in this environment of Superworld and you do certain functions online in digital world, in Superworld if you like, and you do some functions in a physical world, and you can go back and forth seamlessly between these two worlds as almost like an onboarding operating system for this. I'm seeing that that's an opportunity. There's opportunities in film production, distribution, television, games, play to earn games. I think almost everyone I know is creating one of those, either as a company or as a DAO. People are also creating DAOs to support playing of, play to earn games. I think this whole idea of do something to earn revenue is going to reshape the way we work, the way we live, the way we enjoy entertainment. um, there's just opportunity in each direction, and all of you guys, you worked on projects in the metaverse space over the years using AI and blockchain and all sorts of different formats. This is now the time to put it all together and to create something that didn't exist before but really answers the demand that consumers are putting on the space.
yeah, I think a big change that I'm seeing too is a lot of times in the past, the technology was built and then the community was layered on afterwards. And one of the big changes that I'm seeing now is that it seems like a lot of it is community first. Build the community, figure out the technology the community wants, and then build that, which is really a lot more sensible, a lot more lean startup, a lot more build, measure, learn way to create new tech.
So maybe tonight we can refresh the room and also introduce Christian.
Welcome, everybody. You are here at Create Unicorns with NFT, DeFi, and DAOs. This is run by the Infiom network. You can join our mailing list up at the top. Our our website is pinned, infiom.com. And we are so excited to have such a great group of people here, including Christian. Can you introduce yourself, Christian?
Yeah, I'm one of the two managing partners at Tsunami Capital. We are a venture fund based in Newport Beach, and we are entirely focused on Web3, including blockchain-based solutions. We started working on concepts of decentralizing the web in 2008, and yeah, building NFT since 2018.
Yeah, I think actually you're absolutely right about community first, Jeanette. To Carlos's point, there are different marketing and different markets for NFTs. However, there are also, you can't just take blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Um, that's a very variable and dynamic kind of grouping as well. I mean, there's so many different subsets in it. And this whole idea of play to earn or play to learn or all of it, I mean, for me, the entire way that we're going to live, work, and play is being gamified. That makes total sense to me. And, my work in this space especially goes back to the distributed component architecture that we designed for Gracenote. But coming out of Gracenote, my goal was to get all the artists paid because, with all my friends doing the peer-to-peer networks and everything, they were supplanting the sale. They had amplification tools, but they didn't really do transactional. So I prefer to call it a transactional web rather than Web 3. But, I was borrowing from the gaming industry with ScenePlay Entertainment AI, calling it microcash and talking about co-creation and a distributed system before blockchain was even authored by Satoshi. So I think these things are inevitable. It does take a long time before they get their footing. But I mean, I know that the excitement that we felt at different points in time over the last 10 years are real. But this one really feels very different. It feels to me, in fact, that the NFT world is being used at large, and artists being used at large to market programmable currencies to the public to demystify all of this. But the underlying battle is really between cryptocurrencies and central bank currencies, and how that is going to be reflected in the law and in the protocols. And I think if we don't find a middle ground, let's say, then things will get locked down pretty hard before they get opened up again. And I'm really arguing for everybody to, keep a kind of safe space for this innovation and interoperability that we need for the
Christian,
success.
I'm guessing you've got something to say about that.
So many things. Which one do you want me to touch on
Just pick
first?
one.
Just pick one. Well, I just published an article on CBDC specifically because you touched on central bank digital currencies on Hacker Noon on Sunday. I mean, the obvious part should be, so we analyzed most of the proposals of central banks around the world that they brought forth, and they usually talk about stuff like banking the unbanked and cross-border payments and programmable money. But the obvious things they don't talk about, and by the obvious things, I mean the obvious things that are the reason why people are adopting cryptocurrencies. And depending on where you live, this might be different, but an overarching aspect is that of government surveillance. And here in the United States, that might not be such a big concern, but we consult freely for NGOs where they facilitate information and value transfer to people that are being persecuted by their own government. So if and when and where these people can be identified by the legacy financial systems for receiving funds for a particular purpose, well, then these people are being targeted, and not in the funny type of way that social media is targeting you with advertising, but they are being targeted to be disappeared. So that gives you a new appreciation if you're building technology that is globally available for people in terms of the security features that you need to build in. So the larger point here being is we don't expect these security features to be available by any CBDC designs based on what we've been reading. So that's the number one aspect that I'm pointing out, is like we need digital bearer instruments that are completely anonymous to specifically protect people like that. And that should be the standard for anybody. And then the second obvious part is if, when, where we have digital bearer instrument which can move at the speed of bytes, at that point in time, you can perfectly mitigate against the inflationary nature and debasement of a currency. So there's no expectation that CBDCs will do that. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of other issues with that. But then the larger point to understand here, that these are also, from a conceptual design, kind of misguided, right? We have been spending too much time, in a way, working on in-game assets and not enough time on redesigning the avatars, so to speak, that we're using. And this honestly will come back to bite us. And a lot of people waste their time creating funny jiffies rather than trying to redesign how we are onboarding agency, what people call identity, to this new type of web. Because if we are committing the ultimate crime that we did initially and kind of create this digital landfill of PII, if that includes all of a sudden your biometric data, then we will forever live in a complete surveillance state, and I have no interest in participating in that. And
I totally agree with you.
end of rant.
No, and I'm just going to tell you that I delayed the launch of Grace Note for 9 months to ensure privacy because my software tracked what everyone played down to 1/75th of a second for movies, television, and music. And I just so happened to have a fault-tolerant Linux architect as a co-founder. And, and he and I together figured out the architecture, which is still running today, 23 years later. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And to be honest, I think digital identity is the most important issue across all industries, across all countries. And unfortunately, that's why I was making an effort to really talk about the protocols because, you know, you can have a digital lockbox schema for digital identity. And you can do what Facebook did, which was have us all curate our own digital identities online. And Facebook Connect was the most brilliant thing they ever did. But if you have a digital lockbox schema and with different layers of privacy that you get to curate yourself, that lockbox still sits, in a virtual bank in a virtual country. And who controls that? What is the underlying protocol for that? And that's where we need to look to the ITU and stay on top of the ITU and make sure that we don't get these top-down internets that are being proposed right now. And that's why for me, that's sort of the area that keeps me up at night. And one of the things I tell groups that I'm involved with a virtual DAO and for virtual being DAO and other things, is you need to narrowly scope and get it right. Because if you try to boil the ocean, you can't possibly get this right. But I would love to talk to you, Christian, offline a little bit more deeply about the financial instruments because it's an area that is much more difficult for me. But is there a digital identity schema that you're backing? And I had actually put together a group. I never launched it, called DID.media, which was to educate the entertainment and media space about digital identity and why it's so important. But please, if there's one that you are backing, I'd love to know.
Well, there's nothing to back yet, but I should mention I'm the co-chair of the Banking and Finance SIG at the Decentralized Identity Foundation. We have a meeting every other week online. It's on Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. PST. Not a good time for me, but most people are in Europe that dial into this call. So we're working exactly on these particular topics. But then at the OTA, where I'm also a board member, we're working there specifically on the passenger exchange data systems. And this is interesting because that's, in my personal opinion, the most likely area where these things are going to be scaled. Because unfortunately, we have to be backwards compatible with these systems because unless your next digital driver's license that's being issued is compatible with that system, well, then you won't be able to use it to get off a plane in any country. And if it cannot be used by Homeland Security, well, then it's equally useless. Larger point there being is a lot of teams, unfortunately, don't pay any attention to the existing data exchange standards. So my point here being is, as much as I'd like to just entirely trash the old systems, that's unfortunately not going to happen. Plus, several states are rolling out new digital identities right now in the form of digital driver's licenses, and people at wholesale will just start using them. There's no way that the wholesale just going to reject them. So we have to unfortunately live with that particular reality. So our approach to that is simply that of education within that space and educating those people that are implementing these about the dangers, because at the end, the most interesting part is really to come at this from the commercial aspect. So at the OTA, that means that we're talking to hotels, etc., that are now doing intake of biometric data for check-in, and make sure that they already don't contribute to the digital landfill that we call the internet, right? Anyway, but there's a particular slant on the ITU that we can talk about offline, because I'm working on a super interesting project that, if it comes true, then everybody in the world will have a international phone number that will give you rights to receive information and funds.
Oh, wow.
And,
I'm on one of those. That
yes.
sounds awesome.
Me
I'm
too.
glad you're working on these projects, Christian, because I'm glad that someone with your brain capacity is solving this. Because, as Anne pointed out, this is one of the most important things. As you know, Facebooks of the world enter the space. You want to stay away from dystopia. Um,
Yeah. I would love to check in with Frank. You've been waiting very
Hi,
patiently, and
Frank.
I wanted to see if you had a question or want to make a comment or just want to say hi.
Oh, hi guys. Um, I heard you guys talking a lot about play to earn, and I've been involved in playing Axie Infinity for a little bit over a year now, and it's it's definitely changed my life and the lives of a lot of other people for the better.
How
Oh,
So I
that's
so?
wanted to,
awesome. We
Yeah.
love that, Frank.
yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Jugal, is that your name? Jugal?
That's yeah. Jugal is how you pronounce uh, different in the other countries and everywhere. Jugal, however you pronounce it. What I want from all is
Jugal, you're cutting
uh,
in and out. We
I
can't hear
wish
you.
to do
Can you?
something in NFT space in a developing country like India. I belong to India.
For what you said is you want to do something in the NFT space in India, but I didn't hear the rest of it.
Sorry, am I audible right now?
Much better.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, I belong to a developing nation called India, and like everybody else, I have dreams and aspirations to prosper and to spread the love to the country. And I wish to do something with NFT.
To help Indian economy.
Yeah,
Well, I think
I wish.
Carlos may have like many suggestions on the um, what would you consider like a nonprofit side of things. Like I know Superworld is in New York today, and they have a big exhibit that's in the Metaverse. That's in Superworld, if you'd like, and they're actually donating all the proceeds to save the rainforest. So there are many projects in the NFT space that are dealing with. Things that we would consider nonprofit in the past. And I was working with another company that I've been advising for several years called Open Therapeutics. They're about to launch their science coin, and they're going to allow scientists to collaborate on their platform. We were just talking about an NFT drop that would be focused on, curing a specific disease, and then taking most of the proceeds of that NFT's drop to actually create a network that and support the research, and then create the network that would help educate people globally on ways to cure that particular disease, allow access to top tier scientists, etc. So there's a lot of things going on that can improve our life as humans on this planet, in each country or in a specific country. um, and it's good that you're thinking that way, because most of the people in the space are trying to do just that.
I want to create world's first uh, NFT cafe in India.
That would be great.
The world's first cafe, which have been broken down into NFTs. Come support this cafe, buy this NFT, support this cafe, and make this world's first cafe, which has been funded and supported by the NFTs. And the cafe will be the place where we encourage NFT communities, and we encourage artists in India and everywhere else. Come exhibit your art, and let's decentralize this power. I've been working with corporate from the last 15 years, 20 years of my life, and I've been at the mercy of the corporates uh, n- uh, with with the NFTs and with the with this thing. I feel that the world is decentralized.
Yeah,
And we are definitely going to come visit you when you get that all set up. Hugo, we look forward to it.
I would like to go to India. That sounds awesome, actually. That cafe.
Me
You have to
too.
invite us.
Me too. Well, we're just about out of time, and I want to thank everybody who stopped by today. I want to encourage you to go to Infiom and sign up for the mailing list. It's the URL is at the top there. And also check us out at Infinity Festival. We'll be there tonight and tomorrow. Mariana and I are doing some panels with Anne, and Ed's going to be there. And so there's going to be a lot of great content happening there. And encourage you to stay involved with Infium so that you can stay on top of what is happening in this space of NFTs, DeFi, and DAOs.
Thank you. I want to thank the panel. If you click on the link for the Infium Salon, make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Whatever we publish on Sundays, we discuss in both our room on Tuesday mornings, where you can ask us any questions about the articles and/or other topics. And then this room, which is 1:30 to 2:30. This room is following our virtual Infium Salon next Wednesday, which is on Zoom, and we have presentations by top tier CEOs in the space, investors, and heads of innovation of Fortune 500. So we hope to see you next week in the clubhouse on Zoom, and sign up for our newsletter as you click that top button, and follow the moderators, and hope to see you guys next week. Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.